$14 billion. That is how much Honda just pulled out of electric vehicles. $14 billion gone. And you want to know what the mainstream media called it? A strategic realignment. A realignment? No. What just happened at Honda is not a realignment. It is not an adjustment. It is not a pivot. It is a confession. And today, we are going to read every single word of it. Honda's CEO, Toshihiro Mibe, stood in front of cameras, in front of investors, in front of the entire automotive world, and said something that every EV evangelist, every tech journalist, every government official who ever called you old-fashioned did not want you to hear. He said their electric cars are failing. He canceled their entire next-generation EV lineup for North America. 3 models, gone. Years of development, gone. He slashed their 2030 EV target from 30% down to 20%. He froze an $11 billion EV factory in Canada that they had just announced with the Prime Minister of Canada standing next to him, smiling for cameras. And then he sat down and wrote off $15.7 billion in losses, the biggest financial hit Honda has taken in nearly 70 years. Let that sink in. 70 years. Honda, one of the most disciplined, most careful, most respected engineering companies on the planet, just took the single biggest loss of their entire modern history because of electric vehicles. Now here's the thing. You already knew this was coming. You said it years ago. You looked at these EVs and you said, something is wrong here. The range doesn't work for my life. The charging is unreliable. These batteries degrade. Nobody has thought about what happens in winter. Nobody has thought about what happens in a real city, with real traffic, with real people who don't have a garage and a home charger. You said all of that, and people laughed at you. Your family told you to get with the times. Social media called you a dinosaur. News channels said people like you were holding back the future. Honda's CEO just walked into a press conference and proved every single one of you right. So here's what we are going to do today. We're going to go back to the beginning to where this EV story started at Honda. We're going to walk through exactly how it fell apart, step by step, with real numbers and real facts. We're going to read what Mibe actually said, word for word, because the media buried it. And then we're going to talk about what this really means for the engine, for the car industry, and for the people who never gave up on it. Let's go. To understand how catastrophic this collapse really is, you first need to understand what Honda promised. Because they didn't just dip a toe in the water, they did a running jump off a cliff. It started in April 2024. Honda called a major press event in Canada. Not just any event, they brought the Canadian Prime Minister. Justin Trudeau himself stood on that stage, shaking hands with Honda executives, smiling for every camera in the room. And the announcement? Honda was going to build a $15 billion EV complex in Alliston, Ontario. $15 billion. A brand new EV assembly plant, a 36 gigawatt-hour battery factory, 2 separate battery components facilities, all in Canada, all running by 2028. The plant was designed to produce 240,000 electric vehicles every single year. The Canadian government committed $2.5 billion in support. Ontario province committed another $2.5 billion, $5 billion in government money, on top of Honda's own investment. And they called it the future. But that was just Canada. Globally, Honda had announced 10 trillion Japanese yen, roughly $70 billion US dollars, as their total commitment to going electric by 2030. They partnered with Sony to build a new electric car brand called Afeela. They partnered with LG Energy Solution for battery factories in Ohio. They partnered with General Motors to build their first real EV, the Honda Prologue, and the centerpiece of it all, the thing they were most excited about, was something called the Honda Zero Series. The Honda Zero Series was not just a new car, it was a statement. Brand new platform, designed from scratch, built exclusively for electric power, Honda Zero SUV, Honda Zero Saloon, new design language, sleek, futuristic. They showed concept cars at motor shows around the world. The media went wild. Honda's executives said, and I want you to remember these exact words, they said EVs are the optimal solution for the future of transportation. The optimal solution? This was Honda in 2024. All in. No looking back. The engine, the thing that Honda had spent over 75 years perfecting, was being quietly shown the door. And the people who questioned this? The people who said, "Wait, this doesn't make sense," they were told to be quiet and accept progress. But progress, real progress, doesn't fall apart in 12 months. And that is exactly what happened next. While Honda was holding press events and signing government deals, the real story was happening in driveways, in parking lots, in Honda dealerships across America, because Honda's first real electric vehicle, the Prologue, was quietly falling apart. The Prologue launched in 2024. Honda marketed it heavily. They got aggressive lease deals down to $219 a month in some markets, basically giving the car away to get people into it. And people bought it, or rather, people leased it. Then the problem started. Owners were reporting their brand new Prologues wouldn't charge. Not once, not twice. It was a pattern. One owner, Charles Dodd, posted about his experience with his 2025 Prologue. 5,000 miles on the car, brand new, and it stopped charging completely. On top of that, the car was slamming the brakes on its own, with nothing around it, when reversing. Multiple owners reported something called the Service High Voltage System, warning appearing on their dashboards, sometimes during charging, sometimes at random. Reduced acceleration, no cabin heat, cars sitting in dealerships for weeks with no timeline for repair. One owner bought their Prologue in December 2024. By January of 2025, 30 days later, the car was back in the shop. They went online and found dozens of other owners with the exact same problem. And here's the detail that tells you everything you need to know about how poorly executed this was. The Honda Prologue was not even built by Honda. Honda had outsourced it. The Prologue is built on General Motors' Ultium platform, the same platform as the Chevrolet Blazer EV. Honda essentially put their badge on a GM product, gave it a new face, and called it Honda's electric future. Consumer Reports gave the Prologue an abysmally low score for predicted reliability and owner satisfaction. Edmunds gave it a 6.3 out of 10. This is Honda, the company whose engines run for 200,000 miles without complaint, the company whose VTEC technology changed the entire global engine industry, the company that Formula One teams trusted to power their championship-winning cars, that Honda, putting their name on a car that can't reliably charge itself after 5,000 miles. And while all of this was happening in the real world, Honda was still out there announcing billions in EV investments. But behind closed doors, the numbers were starting to tell a very different story, and somebody at the top was starting to notice. May 2025, Honda calls a business briefing, not a product launch, not a motor show reveal, a business briefing, the kind of meeting where you sit down with investors and explain very carefully why things did not go as planned. CEO Toshihiro Mibe stepped up to the microphone, and what he said next should have been the top story on every automotive news channel, every business channel, every newspaper in the world. Instead, most of the mainstream media buried it. So let's read it together, right now, directly from Honda's own official statement. Mibe said, "Uncertainty in the business environment is increasing, due particularly to the slowdown in the expansion of the EV market." He said, "Based on the current market slowdown, we expect EV sales in 2030 to fall below the 30% that we previously targeted." He said, "The outlook is very challenging." And then the announcements started, one by one. The $14 billion cut in EFI investment, from $70 billion down to $48 billion. Gone. The 2030 EV sales target from 30% down to 20%, maybe lower. Gone. The Honda Zero Series, the flagship from the ground-up electric car lineup that they had been showing at motor shows for 2 years. The Zero SUV, the Zero Saloon, canceled. Gone. The Acura RSX Electric, canceled. Gone. The Acura ZDX, which had just launched in 2024, ceased production. Gone. It lasted less than 2 years on the market. And then came Canada. That $15 billion factory in Ontario, the one with Justin Trudeau on stage, first paused for 2 years in May 2025. Then, by May 2026, just this week, suspended indefinitely. No timeline, no revised launch date. Japanese media reporting it could be canceled outright. The land is bought. The government money was committed. $5 billion in public funds, Canadian taxpayer money, allocated to a project that may now never be built. And the financial damage? Honda's profit had already dropped 42%. Then they announced a write-down. Charges totaling $15.7 billion. Development costs, canceled models, asset impairments, money spent on electric cars that will never reach a single customer. $15.7 billion. That is Honda's first annual loss in nearly 70 years. Let me put that in human terms. Honda was founded in 1948 by a man named Soichiro Honda who, in post-war Japan, started his company by literally strapping small engines onto bicycles. That was it. That was Honda's beginning. From a man and his engines, Honda grew into a company that produces 14 million internal combustion engines every single year. More than any other manufacturer on Earth. Cars, motorcycles, boats, power generators, Formula One cars. Nobody has built more engines than Honda. And in 2025, in their attempt to run away from that engine legacy, they posted the worst financial loss they have seen since the company was founded. But here's the part that the media really does not want you to think about. Honda is not alone. While Honda was falling apart, something else was happening in the background, something that explains everything, and it involves the very people who are most aggressively pushing EVs onto you. The EV market didn't just slow down for Honda, it slowed down for everyone. In the last quarter of 2025, October through December, EV sales in America plummeted by 36%. 36% in a single quarter. Meanwhile, you know what did go up? Hybrids. Hybrid vehicles, cars with a real engine and a battery working together, hit a record 19% of all new car sales in the United States. That's up from 11% just 1 year earlier. Think about that. In 1 year, hybrids almost doubled their market share, while EVs were collapsing. Why? Because hybrids make sense for real people. You don't need to find a charger. You don't need to plan your entire road trip around a 45-minute charging stop. You don't need to worry about what happens to your range in winter. You don't need to spend thousands installing equipment in your home before your new car can even function properly. You fill up at any petrol station in the world, just like you have always done. And it's not just consumer behavior that's changing. The government policies that were forcing this EV transition, those are crumbling too. In America, the Trump administration eliminated the $7,500 federal tax credit for new EV purchases. Gone. The incentives that had been propping up EV sales for years removed. The strict fuel economy regulations that were forcing car makers to produce more EVs, whether people wanted them or not, loosened. And suddenly, without subsidies, without mandates, without the government artificially making EVs look affordable, the real picture emerged. People don't want them. Not because people are stupid, not because people are old-fashioned, not because they haven't accepted progress, but because an electric car in 2025 in the real world does not work for most people's actual lives. And the companies that tried to force it, they are now paying the price. Honda is not alone in this. Ford has taken billions in EV losses. GM's Ultium platform, the same platform Honda trusted for the Prologue, has been a disaster. Volkswagen closed EV factories in Germany for the first time since World War II. One by one, every company that bet everything on the EV future that the media promised you is walking it back. But here is what makes Honda different from all the others. Honda knows where it came from, Honda knows what made it great, and Toshihiro Mibe, even while announcing all these write-downs and cancellations, he made one thing absolutely clear. Honda is not giving up on engineering. Honda is going back to it. Here's what Honda is actually doing now. New generation hybrid models, rolling out from 2027 onward. The Ohio facilities, where Honda invested $1 billion, are being retooled not just for EVs, but for petrol cars, hybrids, and flexible production lines. The battery factory that Honda built with LG Energy Solution in Ohio, originally designed only for EVs, is now being reconfigured to support hybrid production as well. Honda is rebuilding itself around the thing it knows better than anyone else on Earth, the engine. Now think about what the engine actually is. We are not talking about something old or outdated. We are talking about one of the most refined, most tested, most perfected pieces of engineering in human history. Honda's VTEC engines, first introduced in the 1980s, changed the global automotive industry forever. Variable valve timing, the ability to give you efficiency when you need economy and power when you need performance, in one engine, seamlessly. Honda engines regularly run for 200,000 miles with only basic maintenance. There are Honda Civics and Accords from the 1990s still running today, over 30 years later, because the engines were built to last. That is not an accident. That is the result of 75 years of refinement, 75 years of listening to what real drivers need, 75 years of building something that people can trust. And now Honda's CEO after spending billions chasing the EV dream, is coming back to that legacy. And I want to ask you something. When you look at your own car, the one you have driven for years, the one you chose, the one that starts every morning without drama, that you can fuel up in 3 minutes at any station on any road in any country, did you ever doubt it? Or did you just trust it? Because that trust, that quiet, practical, unshakable trust in what an engine can do, that is not old-fashioned. That is wisdom. And Honda just spent $15.7 billion to learn what you already knew. We have covered a lot today. But let me leave you with the single most important thing. This is not just a story about Honda. Honda is the signal. When the world's largest manufacturer of internal combustion engines, a company that has been building engines since 1948, tries to abandon that legacy and fails spectacularly. That is the automotive world telling you something. The engine is not going anywhere. Toyota said it, Mazda said it, BMW said it, Porsche said it, and now Honda, after $15.7 billion in losses, after canceling every major EV they had planned, after freezing an entire factory in Canada, Honda is saying it too. For years, people like you have been told you were wrong. For years, you have been made to feel like your preference for a real car, a real engine, was something to be embarrassed about. I am here to tell you, you were never wrong. You were just early. Pause. If this video gave you something to think about, something to share, hit that subscribe button, because this channel exists for one reason: to tell the story that the mainstream auto media won't. And trust me, the next video is going to be even bigger. Stay with us.